I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into I Ching Diary, Growing Through Change in the Age of Corona by Kirk Chernansky. In this revealing book, the author shares the ancient wisdom of the I Ching and how it became a guiding light during the uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic. Through her art and reflections, this work serves as a metaphorical journey of resilience, showcasing the steadfast approach to navigating life's upheavals. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Kirk, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Oh, great. Thanks. I'm really great. I feel great about being here.
Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. Let's start out by breaking down what the I Ching is for the folks at home who are not aware of the document or the text.
Okay. The I Ching is an ancient form of Chinese wisdom. It influenced the writings of Confucius. It consists of 64 hexagrams, which are readings. Also, I think what inspires me most is what it calls its proper principles, which are principles such as awareness, acceptance, compassion, restraint. I'm a therapist, and we use many of those in therapy. Radical acceptance was a basic premise of my therapy. And so it was a really good fit for me. And I think it was a really good fit during the pandemic. It's a book about change, and I can't think of any more radical change than what occurred in 2020, in the beginning of March of 2020.
And it's impacted everything since. I mean, life is 180 degrees different in many ways than it was before March 2020. Let me ask you this. What prompted you to turn to the I Ching during the pandemic as a source of guidance?
Well, of course, I think I'd been reading it for many, many years. I started back in the 90s. In fact, a lot of my artwork has been based on the I Ching. I show it on the cover of my book. It's like a circle of life. And I drew inspiration from the I Ching as I was, writing the book. I think the main thing, though, is that it's a way of turning to a source of guidance, especially when you're in difficult situations. I think of the example of when I was starting out right after graduating in social work. I joined an agency. It was a wonderful agency. I loved being a therapist, but they asked me to become a supervisor. And at the time, I needed the money. It was more money. And I took the position, but I immediately recognized that it was not a good fit for me. I far more preferred direct service, working directly with clients. So the I Ching, the principles that helped me through that was gentleness, persistence, perseverance, acceptance. And, I read it every day until I was able to move back into direct service. It was a lifesaver for me then.
That's wonderful. Can you think of a specific piece of advice from the I Ching that impacted you during the pandemic?
Well, there are a couple of situations I think that had an influence on me. One was nationally, and the other was personally. And I think you're asking about personally, but I would like to bring up, we lost a couple of amazing people during COVID, and we lost someone that just riveted the country, and that was George Floyd. His death suddenly raised our awareness of racial problems.
Yeah.
And it brought people out on the street, out of the lockdown in protest.
Mhm.
This has been racial injustice has been a concern of mine for a long time. And so that occurrence was something that I thought was very meaningful and continues to be. I don't know that we've changed much since then,
Mm.
but I do think we're evolving.
Yeah.
Then on a personal note, I worked at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and a lot of my colleagues continued to work through the pandemic. I was retired. I was really lucky I didn't, because the units were overflowing and the demands on the medical staff and the psychiatric staff was unbelievable with with the amount of patients they had to serve. So I devoted one of the things I wrote about was how much my concern was for them, the direct service providers. There's actually an interesting story about that in terms of the response in my community.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people who work at Northwestern live in this area because the bus stop goes directly down there and it's an easy transportation. But sometime early in the pandemic, I began hearing every evening the sound of the ram's horn.
Hmm.
And I think someone in the neighborhood, or maybe it was a synagogue, was playing that to, my belief is that they played it to welcome staff who were
Mm.
returning from a horrendous shift at the
Yeah.
hospital home again. And it's just a sound that is very moving, the sound of the ram's horn. Usually it's only played at Rosh Hashanah,
Hmm.
but every time I heard it, I felt such a sense of deep appreciation for what those caregivers were providing. It's something we should all remember and be grateful for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. True, true heroes. Going into a pandemic that, people knew very little about the disease, how it was
Right.
transmitted, what kind of danger they were in, and they set their own personal safety aside to serve others. So there's few
Exactly.
things greater in this life than that. What are you hoping readers take away from your book?
Well, primarily it's um, a sense of strength and resilience that
Mhm.
it's there to be had. It's there to be had both internally and externally. From an outer source, people can turn, I mean, the I Ching is an example of an outer source, but it could be the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. It could be your mom or dad.
Yeah.
It's our mentor, whoever you turn to for guidance. And then that inner source of guidance would be your intuition, your higher self, that inner spirit, or what is called the wee small voice. So what I hope people take away is that that is always there, that internal source of wisdom, and you can count on that during the most devastating times for a sense of peace or calm or reassurance, whatever it is you need, it's there to be had.
Absolutely. Tell us about the integration of your artwork into your book.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked.
Sure.
I feel like the artwork is a primary communicator. I am a visual artist. I communicate better, I think, visually than I do with words, which
Mhm.
was why this interview was so challenging to me to
Oh,
begin
you're
with.
doing great. So you're as good
Thank you.
with words as you are with art. So
Oh, bless you for saying that.
certainly.
Okay, so there are two things about my artwork. First of all, it uses the apple, the image of the apple, and the
Hmm.
cover of my book
That's
shows
beautiful.
the circle of life. It's a little apple that grows from a seed into fulfillment of its life purpose, which is to become a fruit-bearing tree.
Right.
So, yeah, that's one aspect of it.
And that's
The other,
encapsulating the essence of growth and change that you experienced during the pandemic?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. The seed goes through a lot of ups and downs and obstacles along the way that as it overcomes them, it grows stronger and is able to achieve perhaps because of all the obstacles it learned to overcome.
Mm.
Um, the other aspect of it, of course, is the image of Marcel Marceau.
Mhm.
His facial expressions, his body language expressed so much, and it came from a very deep history. We think of him as just a mime, but he was a hero during World War II. He, at the age of 15, had to leave Strasbourg with his family during the invasion. And then he joined the French resistance.
Mm.
His father died in a concentration camp, and
Oh.
then he began entertaining the troops. And out of that, it became a lifelong mission of his to lift people's spirits in what he called
Mime.
the quiet. It was a form of language, a silent language of the soul.
Mm.
And it was that sense that I wanted to convey in my art. So I'll show you an example.
Sure, absolutely. Love to see it.
I don't know if you can see
Oh, I
this.
can, yes.
Okay, so this is him.
Hmm.
This is the image of him. And I wrote these when on July 10th, which was when John Lewis passed away.
Yes.
He was, as you know, he was a proponent of nonviolent action in his civil rights.
Yeah, civil rights hero for sure.
Right. So the sequence shows the emerging of a butterfly, which is a symbol of transformation. And
Exactly.
John Lewis was an example of the I Ching's principles of inaction, patience, compassion for ourselves and others. So that message, I think, in the midst of grief and loss, these values continue to shape our lives. And
Yeah.
yeah, he was a
Yeah.
real inspiration to me.
Well, wonderful. And you've done a wonderful job of your interpretation of the text, your prose, your artwork. It all comes together into a beautiful book. And it is a book about change and challenges and endurance and being like that apple seed that grows into a tree despite all the obstacles that get in the way. And I think it's a wonderful example for our readers who are facing not only challenges during times of the pandemic, but just challenges in their lives in general. So there's lots of applications here as well. The name of the book is I Ching Diary, Growing Through Change in an Age of Corona. It is written by Kirk Chernansky. It's a wonderful book. It shares how the ancient wisdom of the I Ching became a guiding light during the uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, before that and beyond. Kirk, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. It's a wonderful thing you're doing, and I appreciate your including me in it.
Oh, I appreciate your time. I enjoyed speaking with you. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.